Hello and welcome to What's Cooking at Acquis. What's Cooking is a monthly podcast series dedicated to delivering EU developments, news, book reviews, and discussions surrounding culture and gastronomy, as well as sessions with surprise guests. This podcast is brought to you by Acquis EU Law Policy, an independent international partnership established on the doorsteps of the EU institutions in Brussels that offers EU legal, regulatory, and policy services for diplomatic and private sector clients. If you'd like to learn more about Acquis EU Law Policy, please visit our website at www.acquislp.eu. That's www.acquislp.eu. Thank you for joining us for episode 2 of the Acquis EU Law and Policy podcast. On this episode, we are happy to have our intern, Alicia Ratnam, speaking to us about her life as a student in the UK, Singapore, and how COVID-19 has been shaping that experience. But first, we will start with our new segment, The International Business Traveller. Enjoy. So that was the jingle for the International Business Traveller, which is a difficult topic to discuss right now because, of course, there is no international business travel. We've recently heard that the situation in the Netherlands has been deteriorating, Jeroen, with cross-border migrants flooding into Belgium, trying to take advantage of our open restaurants. What do you make of the situation?
Well, thank you, Alexander. And I think indeed it's a bit worrying that on one side of the border, restaurants are still open and might be flooded by desperate and hungry Dutchmen. At the same time, I don't think that we should exaggerate that effect. I think, in principle, the measures are understandable. It is a serious increase, but at the same time, Belgium and the Netherlands are quasi on par when it comes to the unfortunate number of infections.
Now, we were listening to a very angry man yesterday on the radio. He was the representative for the Belgian restaurants, and he was getting quite annoyed that only 1 million Belgians have downloaded the Corona tracking and tracing app. And there seems to be a general distrust within Belgian society and this app in general. So where do you think that is stemming from?
Well, I downloaded. I think that the French were the first with track and trace app, and I downloaded the French app, and I thought, well, great. Now I'm completely in tune with technological developments, but it didn't work in Belgium, the French app. So I basically gave up on the apps, and there was too much confusing information on what the app does and what it does not. And of course, in the beginning, there was a serious concern about data protection and privacy. And I can understand that when that is not resolved, this lack of proper information, that it will be difficult for the average user, the average citizen, although average does not exist, but to use it and commit to it. But so I understand a little bit I have to rephrase this. I fully understand the reluctance, but in other countries it might be different. The communication might have been better. Germany, for example, Laura.
I think so. I agree. It's a difficult discussion, of course, and by using these types of things for each individual, of course, there's always this trade-off between privacy concerns on the one hand and then the benefits of information sharing on the other hand. And this benefit is, in the case of these Corona warn apps, that's just a public health benefit. In other cases, it could be using a music app and receiving targeted recommendations, for instance. So I do believe that in this case, the concerns have been sufficiently addressed as far as I understand. Yeah, and actually the system, how it works is there's an exchange of actually anonymized and randomly generated Bluetooth IDs. So it works via Bluetooth, no location data is being shared. The ID that is being stored on your phone, it's not connected to your name, to your location, to the people you meet. But I agree with you, Jeroen. It might just be that government information on this has been, or that there has been a lack of government information on this.
Yeah, and on explaining what it indeed does and how the data protection and privacy sensitive issues are managed, I think. But is the app, or are the apps similar or equivalent across the board when you look at the European spectrum?
Many of them are. I know the Belgium app is based on part of the infrastructure of the German app, which has been developed or is based on an infrastructure provided by Google and Apple, so that the Bluetooth IDs of both operating systems can communicate. Yeah.
But I also think that the involvement of the big tech companies like Google and Apple are part of the problem. I think that many consumers just do not trust these companies, and these companies have also not done enough in the past to establish trust among the more critical and more assertive users, I would say. So let's see where that all ends up. What I think is a big concern is that the tracking and tracing in environments like the Netherlands and Belgium, where you have so many infections meanwhile, that the tracking and tracing is going to implode in terms of the manpower that is needed. And that is what we have seen, I think, in the Netherlands, which by coincidence I was informed about, that they just follow up now not with a conversation on the whereabouts and the exposure and the environments that people were in when they were infected, but they just get a simple SMS that they are infected or that they have been exposed. Not that they are infected, but that they have been exposed, being close to someone that has been affected. So I think that it is too little, too late in some cases. In other countries, probably there's still a chance, Germany included, that it will work. I'm waiting for a European integration of the apps, so that with my French app in Belgium, I can also go to the Netherlands and Germany, and later on to Vienna to be, let's say, app-proof, up and running. And I think that is a point I want to make. It should be a European track and trace system. These systems should be combined, because if you don't combine the system, then at least you are basically held hostage to a national app, and I don't think that is sufficient.
Yeah. I think in this regard, Jeroen, you were not the only person worrying about this, and this interoperability, it's being worked on. So
yeah, that's good. If you allow me, because we're looking at travel and mindful of the time, I think there is a very important development this week that we should highlight. And we have all noticed that in the beginning of the COVID crisis, there were lockdowns, there were border closures, there were quarantine prescriptions, mandatory COVID tests, a whole range of instruments, basically frustrating the movement of professionals and individuals throughout the European Union. It is therefore very important that the European Council, upon the recommendation of the Commission this week, decided that if you are a professional traveler, or if you travel for personal family business, or are owning two properties in different jurisdictions, that the requirement to go into quarantine is lifted or abolished, and that you are basically moving around on the basis of self-assessed risk assessment in combination with the normal, let's say, sanitary rules that you have to apply. I think that this is an important element, because quarantine for many of the professional travelers that really take care of where they are and what they do has a very disproportionate effect, and that should be avoided. When these measures, these intrusive measures are there, they should always be necessary and proportionate to the goal that they want to achieve. And I think that's my opinion on that. Thank you, Alexander, for hosting us this morning.
Yeah, on to the next topic then.
With us today, Alicia Ratnam. She is Singaporean, a law student and a summer intern here at Acquis EU Law Policy. Good morning, Alicia.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It is great to share some views and have a conversation on your student life in Europe. You've been living in Belgium for the last 4 years.
That's correct.
And were you able to notice differences in the legal systems between Singapore and Belgium?
I've noticed very noticeable differences between the Singapore and EU legal system. For example, Singapore has very strong laws on racism and on anti-racism. So any comments made to social media, any actions that can be interpreted as racist face very strong penalties, be it fines or jail sentences. Whereas in contrast, EU laws, I would say, are slightly more relaxed. Perhaps that's because it's harder to control given the size of EU population in comparison to Singapore. Singapore also has the Protection Against Online Falsehood and Manipulation Act, the POFMA, which falsehoods published online face legal actions. Whereas I think the EU is a bit more liberal. Definitely, I think that in terms of the legal system, Singapore is very much more protectionist, whereas EU is a bit more open.
It's interesting that you say this. And let's go back to this issue of free speech. At the moment, we see that free speech, what is currently happening also in the migration debate, the multicultural debate in Europe, but also in particular the populism that is very much on the rise, and that stream uses the social media and the free speech, as you wish, to further their ideas, but on the basis of half-truths, on the basis of xenophobia, on the basis of... So, do you think that Europe should or would evolve to have a more controlled internet, social media and free speech regulated system? The reason why I'm asking is because I think free speech is not unlimited. I mean, when free speech touches upon other essential ingredients or pillars of democracy and society, it should be addressed also in a regulatory context. But you've seen the situation in Singapore, you see the situation now. I mean, would the populistic trends and the fake news as it is, would that be a concern for you, undermining democratic systems and pillars?
Well, I personally think it's a very fine line between what people see as too controlled, they can not say anything at all, versus something being too free and too open and ends up, spreading very harmful views. I think a good area to draw that line would be perhaps not to curtail fake speech, but to curtail speech that is hurtful towards other people. So all these populist and xenophobic sentiments they are all clearly targeting a specific ethnic group, a specific racial group. So they clearly can be interpreted as hurtful. Whereas perhaps other, in articles you publish a misrepresented number, but it doesn't harm anybody. Perhaps that's where you could draw the line to sort of curtail these sentiments that are spreading based on fake information, but also still allow people to express their views.
Yeah, but of course the limits of free speech, as you rightly said, are also partly provided by when statements become discriminatory, and when statements and proposed actions continue to or will start to be an infringement of the rights of others.
Exactly.
But therefore, I mean, of course, ultimately the courts will decide. In your own personal context, as a minority, would you describe yourself as a minority in Singapore? How in relation to the let's say the demographic makeup?
Oh yeah, definitely. Singapore has a very large Chinese majority. I think 68 to 70%, if I'm not wrong, and then about 20% of Malays, and then the rest 10% are Indians and others. So mathematically, I'm clearly a minority in Singapore, and that has Singapore's laws are all centered about equality and ensuring, equal opportunities for all, which is, extremely good reality.
When you look at your stay here in Brussels, is there anything in particular that you do not want to have missed out on or experienced that was special and memorable?
Oh, definitely. I think living in Brussels has given me the chance to interact with so many different communities I normally wouldn't have been able to. For example, when I was in school here, I led Maison des Femmes, which is a volunteer project helping refugees integrate in society, and just hear about all the struggles they went through, crossing the border, leaving their home, and how difficult it was for them to integrate into a new country.
Of course, you were studying in London in the last year, and then the last part of the study program for this year, at least, was very much influenced and affected by the COVID-19 crisis and the restrictions. How did you experience that isolation and suddenly the student life coming to a complete standstill?
Well, I think as an international student, the effects of COVID-19 are more harshly felt, because all of a sudden, with all the lockdowns, all the travel restrictions, you realize that you have absolutely no way to be with your family or to return home, and that you are truly all alone. So then you feel even more isolated. So that was definitely difficult. But ultimately, personally, my university in London was very adaptable to the changes, and they were very understanding towards international students. So that was a very positive experience.
What are you going to do when you go back? Are you going back to study? That is at least the objective, yes?
Yes, definitely. Personally, I've decided to, because of COVID-19, to switch universities and to return back home to study, simply because I feel it's a more stable environment. No matter what, border closures, I know that I'm at home, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one who's made that decision.
Yeah.
Singapore universities have recently extended their application deadline and created a whole new application window for international students who now want to return home. So it's definitely going to be, a huge sudden movement of students leaving these international universities and deciding to pursue local studies instead. So it's very big changes all around.
Well, yeah, and it is very good thinking of the universities, I think, to adapt to the situation.
Yeah, definitely.
And being a national, a citizen, of course, gives you a safe harbor, so to say, to continue, because otherwise students that lose too much time or that are obstructed by the virus might also be disappointed and disincentivized to continue studies, which is not what we want to see. Thank you, Alicia. That is all that we have time for today.
Thank you very much.
We wish you a bon voyage, going back to Singapore at some point, and a continuation of your studies. And we'll stay in touch. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed the Acquis EU Law and Policy podcast. We hope you will join us again next month, and thank you for listening.